after Manchester City's cup final win on Saturday, at the press conference, Pep Guardiola became extremely irate when he was asked a question about UEFA's investigation of Manchester City under the fair play regulations. And the question was put by Rob Harris, a very respected correspondent from the Press Association. And he asked Pep about the financial fair play investigation UEFA were conducting into Manchester City. And Pep didn't take very kindly to the question. And it's a pleasure to welcome Rob Harris to the podcast. Rob, your question to Guardiola drew an irate response. What was the question?
Well, it all centres around the ongoing financial fair play investigation into Manchester City, and obviously it's right at the top of the agenda again because last week the investigators passed it across to the judges to rule on. And given the fact we've seen this record-breaking season, we've seen such acclamation of the players' achievements, we have to look at actually, of course, that this investigation centres on how Manchester City built football's most expensive squad, and it's over allegations that they circumvented the financial fair play rules and somehow to allow them to invest this amount of money in players. So post-match on Saturday at Wembley, it seemed very relevant to bring the financial fair play case up, given the fact so many are mentioning it, and it is there against the backdrop of what still is a tremendous achievement as a group of players on the pitch in their dominance. And the first question was actually more general. It was, first of all, a congratulations to Pep and a recognition that he necessarily isn't, he isn't responsible for the club's finances. He isn't a director. It's unfortunate he's the only person we can put these questions to. And, I asked him just how he responds to those who say that the achievement is somehow diminished by the investigations, of which he launched into a long reply, which included him saying he trusts the club over this and very much backing them and defending the club. So I thought, well, given that he's sort of took so emphatically in defence of the club, it was the time, some would question the timing, but it was the final chance of the season. And it was the chance I thought was necessary to bring up an issue I'd first put to Manchester City in November and received no response to, which is one of the parts of the Football League's investigation, which is that Roberto Mancini, our Manchester City manager, had a salary larger than his Manchester City salary, receiving from one of Sheikh Mansour's clubs in Abu Dhabi. City never commented on it. They never disputed the authenticity of the documents, but that would mean that he would be earning more potentially from a role we never even knew he particularly had. This all comes down to the heart of City needing to keep their losses down in order to comply with financial fair play. We don't know what exactly they told UEFA about this. We await to discover around that. So I asked Pep Guardiola, as I did to City in November, whether he had any other roles within City Football Group, spreads around the world. Does he receive another salary?
Yes.
And of which he didn't give a yes or no. He just got irate.
Yes, and I mean the allegation in the case of Montini is that I think 140,000 or thereabouts was paid through Manchester City, and that a similar amount was paid through this company controlled by the Sheikh, therefore off the books. And
it was about 1.5 million. They're both figures around 1.5 million. But the Abu Dhabi one
I underestimated. That was his taxi money. So basically, what I'd like to know, and what I think our listeners would like to know, is the nature and extent of the allegations and the charges that UEFA are considering in relation to, for example, stopping Manchester City from participating in the Champions League next year, and also from engaging in transfer activity, because these are the sanctions that are available to UEFA if Manchester City should be found guilty. And it isn't just on the basis of Mancini's remuneration, but it could also stretch much wider than that. Sponsorship, other players' salaries as well.
Yeah, the Montini aspect is perceived to be, that's a smaller aspect, and we don't know how significant that plays into the case or not. I mean, as a broader aspect, Manchester City were, of course, punished in 2014 as a part of a financial fair play settlement for breaching FFP at the time. That led to the reduction on how big a squad could be in the Champions League. It led to a fine as well. A lot of parts of this case centre on leaks about what Manchester City were up to at the time, building up to that settlement. And the question is whether or not the correspondence we've seen from the leaks was actually fully declared to UEFA at the time in terms of some of the financial mechanisms that were in place. And what we have discovered from the leak is various sponsorship deals had a far more complex arrangement around them, but allegedly including companies linked to Mansour actually paying back the companies that were sponsoring Manchester City in Abu Dhabi.
Yes.
A majority, a lot of their income on sponsorship front is from Abu Dhabi companies, and obviously the club is owned by a member of the ruling family. So that would appear to be a related party. It's something particularly that the La Liga president Javier Tebas is concerned about. He thinks it's state-aided funding, effectively, of a football club. So Manchester City have already been punished, and it's not necessarily re-punishing them over the past settlement, but actually were City fully transparent with their information on their finances to UEFA at the time. And it's this sense that they're being misled by the Manchester City executives that does concern UEFA, and it indeed looks like the grounds for a potential one-season Champions League ban. I mean, there is a feeling in UEFA they have to seem to get tough, to uphold financial fair play.
And of course, the fact that 4 English teams are in the finals of the 2 major European competitions, the Europa League and the Champions League, would seriously concern Spanish clubs, Italian clubs, Bayern Munich, for example, in Germany. And if it's being done with the support of money irregularly paid, that is very serious indeed. How rigorous, Rob, is the UEFA investigation? Who else might be investigating as well? Are the Premier League looking at this? Are FIFA looking at this? Is this a full-on, rigorous investigation? And that will come up with definitive findings, or do you think there could be a fudge at the end of it?
Well, there's actually many strands to this. The FIFA case actually relates to a potential transfer ban, very similar to Chelsea have already had imposed over the signing of young players, which we've seen Real Madrid, Atletico Madrid, so many sort of fall foul of. That is one particular investigation. The Premier League are also investigating Manchester City over financial fair play and other aspects linked to the signing of players as well. A lot of things that actually emerged in the football leaks, which remember actually came from Der Spiegel in November, when they started to publish various bits of internal correspondence, emails, and dealings in terms of threats to try to undermine the UEFA case. They even celebrated the death of a former Belgian Prime Minister who was investigating financial fair play. So there are multiple strands of this investigation, which again makes it very hard to ignore when we're talking about sporting success, and sporting success that is so significant. But we await any update really from the Premier League in terms of their case. What they said at the time was they emphasised not specifying the particular charge. They stated that the league has detailed financial regulations and strong rules in the areas of academy player recruitment and third-party ownership. We are investigating these matters, and they said they're waiting for City's chance to explain themselves. So we're now a couple of months on from that.
Is there a timeline, Rob, for this investigation to conclude? Is there any sense that we know, or when it might conclude?
Well, UEFA would obviously, I'm sure, hope to get it done before the group stage draw in August. I mean, if it's not done before then,
Yes.
the ban would take effect until the following year. It's now the judiciary side of the UEFA investigatory branch that is looking to at the case presented by the investigators. Obviously, there are now a few months until that draw. The problem is, City can go to the Court of Arbitration for sport and challenge this. And then one thing that happens, though, if it does go to the Court of Arbitration for Sports, is we do get to see the full case at the end. We get to see
Yes.
masses of information, which obviously would be quite interesting if it's in the public domain, rather than if City, which they're not going to do, if they are banned, I'm sure they would take it to that level. So this could go on for some time.
Is there a feeling that players were availing of the same kinds of deals that Montini allegedly did?
We don't know about that. We know there are parts of, we often third party image rights payments are
Yes.
often a factor in all this in terms of how that is operated on. But we don't know of players at all being accused of receiving anything like that. And again, although what we're seeing, of course, is a very partial picture. We're seeing from the leagues themselves, and of course, we're only seeing from Manchester City because they've managed to. The football league people gained a lot of information from there, and maybe there are other clubs as well. Or, there are aspects about other clubs from football leagues as well about their own conduct. And Paris Saint-Germain were punished in France because it showed racial profiling of signing players and recruiting players. So of course, it's not just Manchester City who football leagues, obtain information on.
Yeah, I mean, UEFA itself and FIFA have both been subject to investigations in the not too distant past. You'd worry about the investigators in this case. The other, I suppose, a huge factor in the equation is the murky nature of football finance, the payment to players, the involvement of agents. I mean, Paul Pogba's agent being a good example of this. As I understand it, at the moment, he's under some kind of ban. So it's a very murky vessel, isn't it?
Yeah, and when you talk about the ban for Mino Raiola, and that was enforced in Italy and has been extended internationally by FIFA. Perhaps it would just, it's unrelated to City. I always think, perhaps we need more of the American system in a way where actually all salaries are published and maybe even all transfer fees. And we know all payments that have gone to agents. I mean, it's not like there is immense amounts of secrecy around these transfer fees anyway. So actually, if you put them all out in the open, you put the salaries out in the open, obviously, for some it might cause issues in clubs if you're meant to be on a par with the highest earner, and if you're meant to be earning a certain amount, that could create issues. But maybe just to have faith in the system, that would be one way of actually of ensuring the fans know where the money that they're paying for tickets goes to.
Now, in the case of Manchester City in particular, I mean, this is what Arsene Wenger was referring to when he talked about financial doping in soccer. This means the playing field isn't level, and it's become so unlevel, if you like, that it's no longer a fair contest. I mean, Saturday would be a good example of that. I think City have invested 1.2 billion net in players. Watford, 150 million. Results 6-0, not much of a spectacle. And the game becoming out of reach, and the prizes in the game and trophies and indeed best players out of reach of the vast majority of clubs. And now, and I wonder, is this, I think you alluded to this a few moments ago, Rob, the players been out of reach of even the Spanish giants, Barcelona and Real Madrid, and the Italian giants, AC Milan of the past, Juventus at the moment, Bayern Munich, for example. Karl-Heinz Rummenigge saying of the Paul Pogba fee, he said, we'd rather build a stand to buy Paul Pogba. So there's a whole sort of vast area here of deep concern about the sort of prizes, the great players, and the access to all of these things shrinking to a point where only a handful of clubs at most can afford to to compete.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it helps when the football drifts down the ecosystem, and it, if English club buys from a sort of smaller German club or a mid-ranking club, they do get the benefits back there and reinvesting the same in other countries. But yeah, I mean, the dominance of the Premier League in particular is something that gets to other clubs in Europe, and it's why they are trying to make the Champions League more of a close competition, even bigger competition. They want, clubs like Juventus want to play in the Champions League more. They want more games in the group stage because their own domestic competition is so weak, and they've run away with an 8th title in a row or something. And actually, they prefer to be playing more attractive games in Europe. They prefer to be playing at weekends in Europe as well, because those leagues have been diminished. I mean, obviously, the Watford result aside, the Premier League at least would see itself as more equal across parts of the league in terms of the obviously the funding arrangements are now changing, with the foreign TV cash no longer being split equitably, and there is that gap from second to third, another big jump from 6th to 7th as well, which is a concern. But at least, we did have the title race going down to the final day. Top 4 did sort of go down to the final day as well. The 4th place between Spurs and Arsenal, even though it was only a mathematic, improbability it would change hands. But, at the heart, often hear, the talking points around Manchester City are, they've not spent as much as Liverpool on a single defender in terms of Van Dijk. They've not spent as much on a single midfielder as United or any of the team, Paul Pogba. They've not spent as much on a striker as Aubameyang at Arsenal. But actually, what City can do with is actually obviously have that strength in numbers. They can make mistakes in terms of paying 40 odd million for Mangala. They can break their transfer record for Mahrez and leave him on the bench for most of the season.
Now, just a final question, Rob. I saw David Walsh in the Sunday Times rubbishing the idea that financial fair play should exist at all, and laughing at the idea, mocking the idea that there should be any concerns about financial fair play. David Walsh is a friend of mine, a former colleague here, before he became, a very respected and much garlanded sports writer for the Sunday Times. Is there a feeling, or is there a sense in which journalists, other than Der Spiegel, and that they are pretty sanguine about all of this, turn a blind eye to it, know what's going on, but aren't too keen to ask the kind of tough question, rigorous question that you asked to provoke Guardiola on Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, I did see David at Wembley on Saturday. We didn't talk about FFP. In fact, some of our recent conversations were around John Delaney, which is obviously a whole separate matter involving Uefa.
Yeah.
But one thing that's often perhaps lost in the FFP debate is it's not just about losses and about how much you spend on players. It was introduced around the time of the global financial crisis by Michel Platini,
Yes.
and there are parts of FFP which are less headline grabbing, but are actually very significant. The clubs across Europe, which is they monitor if clubs are paying tax authorities, if they're paying the players, if they're paying staff, if they're paying the transfer fees to other clubs, and if you haven't paid your key liabilities to staff and to other clubs, then you can get banned for that reason. And it probably comes down to the fact UEFA don't do a particularly good job in terms of selling their own policy. They don't explain it to the public in terms they can understand. You won't have seen a single UEFA person, talk at the fans level in recent years to make very clear just what is financial fair play.
Yeah, and we should point out, I suppose, we should, that exposing FIFA and what was going on there was very much a Sunday Times investigation, and they deserve credit for that. Rob, it's very good of you to join us on The Stand, our podcast, and thank you very much, and congratulations on having the courage and the fortitude to withstand Mr. Guardiola's irate response.
Yeah, good to join you.
Thank you very much, Rob. Bye-bye.